She whispered, "You're my first." The Apache vowed she'd be his forever. It was early morning when the Apache man walked along the quiet dirt road, his steps slow but purposeful. The sun had just begun to rise, painting the sky in shades of soft orange and pink. The air was cool, carrying the smell of earth and the faint scent of wildflowers from the nearby hills. He always liked mornings like this, when the world seemed calm and still. The noise of life had not yet begun, and he could think clearly. Thinking was important to him because he had lived long enough to know that life was not always easy, and every choice mattered. He was a man of few words. People often said he had a presence that made others feel both calm and a little nervous at the same time. He did not speak unless it was necessary, and he never made promises lightly. Life had taught him that words were fragile, but actions were real. Every day he followed a quiet routine. He tended to his land, looked after the small herd of animals he kept, and walked through the hills to clear his mind. It was not a lonely life. He valued his solitude because it gave him strength. But deep down, there was a part of him that longed for connection, for someone who could understand the silent rhythm of his world. Meanwhile, not far from him, a young woman was starting her day in a very different world. She lived in a small town, in a house filled with light and the warmth of her family's presence. She was gentle and soft-spoken, the kind of person who noticed small things others often missed. The way sunlight fell through the window, the quiet hum of birds, or the faint scent of rain on the grass. She carried her own memories, some joyful, some filled with loss. Life had not been simple for her either. She had learned to be cautious, to protect her heart, and yet she had not stopped hoping that someone, somewhere, might understand her completely. Their worlds were different in many ways, but fate has a way of crossing paths when it is least expected. It happened one warm afternoon when the Apache man had gone to the town nearby to gather supplies. He preferred to keep to himself, walking quietly through the streets, unnoticed by most. The woman was there too, helping a friend carry groceries. Their eyes met for a brief moment, a spark of recognition that neither of them could explain. It was not love at first sight in the way people often speak of it, but it was curiosity, a quiet pull that whispered of something rare and unusual. At first, they exchanged nothing more than a polite nod, yet the world has its small ways of insisting on connection. A few days later, their paths crossed again. This time, she was sitting alone on a bench near a small fountain in the town square, sketching something in her notebook. He stopped to tie his boot, pretending not to notice her, but his eyes lingered. Something in the way she focused, the gentleness of her movements, made him pause. He had met many people in his life, but very few had a presence that felt both familiar and mysterious at the same time. She looked up at him then, sensing that he was watching. Instead of being shy or awkward, she gave a small, calm smile. It was a smile that did not demand attention but offered warmth anyway. He nodded slightly, a gesture almost invisible, yet it was enough to communicate something quiet, acknowledgement. That small gesture marked the beginning of many quiet encounters. In the following weeks, they began to meet in subtle ways. Sometimes it was at the market, sometimes on the trail leading out of town, and sometimes at the fountain where she sketched. They did not speak much, but their silence was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that holds meaning, a way of learning about each other without the need for words. The Apache man noticed how she moved, how she observed, how she laughed softly when something amused her. She noticed how he carried himself, how calm he remained even in the midst of small disturbances, how his eyes seemed to look deeper than just appearances. One day, as the sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, she spoke first. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, yet it carried a weight that surprised him. "I feel like I can tell you things I have never told anyone," she said. He looked at her carefully, not out of suspicion but out of respect. In his life, he had learned that trust is not given lightly. It is earned through patience, consistency, and sincerity. "I'm listening," he said finally in his deep, calm voice. It was not an offer of sympathy, nor was it an intrusion. It was simply a recognition of her courage to speak. She took a deep breath and lowered her gaze, as if she were afraid that saying the words aloud might make them fragile. "You're my first to see me like this. To see all the things I hide from the world," she whispered. The words were simple, but they carried a depth that made him pause. He had never been told something so personal, so delicate, by someone who did not have an obligation to reveal it. He felt a strange mix of honor and responsibility. His heart, which he had guarded so carefully, recognized the trust she had placed in him. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the golden glow of sunset, he made a silent vow to himself. He would not speak the words yet, but he promised that her trust would not be misplaced. Her first revelation, her first quiet confession, would be respected, cherished, and protected. Days turned into weeks, and their connection grew slowly, naturally, without pressure. They shared small things, stories of their childhoods, the work they did, the dreams they secretly held. She admired his discipline, the way he carried his past without letting it weigh him down. He admired her gentleness, the way she noticed the beauty in small things, the way she listened without judgment. Together, they began to build a small world, a quiet world, where two people could understand each other without needing loud declarations or grand gestures. It was during one of their quiet walks that he finally spoke more than usual. They were near a small river that flowed gently through the countryside. The water reflected the pink and gold of the evening sky, and the soft rustle of leaves created a melody that seemed to belong only to them. He told her about his childhood, about the challenges he had faced, and about the lessons he had learned from people who were no longer there. She listened intently, absorbing each word, not as a story to judge, but as a window into the soul of the man she had begun to trust. When it was her turn, she hesitated, then spoke about her past, her fears, and her hopes for the future. Her voice was soft but steady, carrying a vulnerability that was brave. The Apache man did not interrupt, did not offer advice, nor did he try to fix anything. He simply listened, and that act, quiet as it was, became one of the strongest bonds they could have. In their world, words were precious, but listening was sacred. By the time the night fell and stars began to twinkle above, they had discovered something neither had expected, a quiet understanding that did not need labels. It was a connection built on respect, trust, and the courage to reveal one's true self. In that moment, the Apache man realized that life had brought him something rare. Someone had trusted him with her heart, even in a small way, and he intended to honor that trust with everything he had. As they parted that night, he did not say much. A nod, a gentle smile, and a promise made in silence were enough. He would keep her confidence safe. He would remain steadfast. He would be someone she could count on. And although the world outside their quiet encounters might be chaotic and unpredictable, within their shared moments, there was a sense of calm, a sense of safety, and a sense of something lasting. It was the beginning of a journey neither could fully understand yet, but both felt it deep in their hearts. Life was not always easy, and the future held challenges they could not foresee. Yet in the quiet moments of trust and understanding, they discovered a rare treasure, the first glimpse of a bond that could endure the trials of life, a bond built not on words alone, but on the quiet strength of respect, loyalty, and unspoken promises. And so, in the soft glow of the early days of their connection, the Apache man made the first of many silent vows, to protect, to respect, and to honor the fragile trust that had been placed in him. She, in turn, whispered more than words. She gave him her honesty, her presence, and her willingness to believe that someone could truly see her. And in that exchange, a story began, a story of patience, understanding, and a promise that neither time nor circumstance could easily break. Days passed, but the connection between the Apache man and the woman only grew stronger. Their meetings were never forced. They happened naturally, as if life itself was guiding them toward each other. Every shared smile, every quiet glance, and every small conversation added layers to a bond that neither of them fully understood, yet both felt deeply. For the Apache man, life had always been about discipline, routine, and quiet observation. He had faced hardships that left their mark on him, yet he had never experienced something like this. Someone trusting him so completely, so early, and so quietly. The woman, on her part, found in him a calmness she had never known. She had been careful with people, rarely letting them close, and yet she felt safe with him. There was no rush, no pressure, no expectation, only patience and quiet understanding. She began to notice little things about him. How his hands moved when he worked, the steady rhythm of his breathing when he walked, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, and the unspoken attention he gave to everything around him. It was a presence that reassured her in ways words never could. One afternoon, they walked together along a narrow trail that led up into the hills surrounding the town. The air was warm but not too hot, and the scent of wild grass mixed with the faint aroma of blooming flowers. They did not speak much, each lost in thought, but there was comfort in simply being near each other. Then, unexpectedly, the woman paused and turned to him, her eyes serious yet vulnerable. "I feel like I can trust you," she said softly, "more than I've ever trusted anyone." He stopped walking and looked at her carefully. It was not the first time she had expressed something personal, but this time it felt different. There was a weight in her words, a depth that required more than a simple nod or a polite response. He took a deep breath, thinking about what he should say. Words were important, but actions were far more telling. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm and steady. "If you trust me, I will not take it lightly. I will do my best to honor it." Those words, simple as they were, seemed to settle something in her. She nodded slightly, a small smile touching her lips, and they continued walking. The silence that followed was comfortable, filled with understanding rather than emptiness. In that moment, both of them realized that trust, once earned, was more powerful than any spoken promise. They didn't need grand declarations or dramatic gestures. They only needed presence, patience, and respect. As weeks turned into months, their relationship grew in quiet ways. They shared small routines, walking through the hills, watching sunsets together, and talking about their dreams and fears. Sometimes, the Apache man would teach her how to identify the birds or how to track animal signs in the fields. Other times, she would tell him about her favorite books, the music she liked, and memories from her childhood. Each story, each shared moment, became a thread in the tapestry of their connection. Yet, life was not without its challenges. The woman's family, though kind, had expectations and worries about the differences between them. They did not fully understand his quiet ways, his discipline, or the way he carried himself. They questioned whether someone so different could truly be part of their lives. She felt torn between the trust she had in him and the pressure from those around her. She confided in him one evening as they sat by a small campfire, the flames dancing and casting soft light on their faces. "I don't know if people will ever understand us," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "They might think I'm making a mistake or that we are too different." He looked at her, his expression calm but serious. "I cannot control what others think," he said. "I can only be here and I can only be honest. That is all I can offer. But if you are willing to trust me, that is enough." Those words carried a weight that went beyond their simplicity. He was not making promises he could not keep. He was offering his steady presence, his honesty, and his loyalty. For her, it was more than enough. She realized that love was not about perfection or approval from everyone. It was about finding someone whose presence made the world feel safer, whose actions proved trustworthiness, and whose heart matched your own in quiet ways. The Apache man, too, was learning. Life had taught him that relationships could be fleeting, that people could break trust or leave when life became hard. But with her, he felt a strange certainty he had never felt before. Her honesty, her willingness to share her vulnerabilities, and her quiet strength touched him in ways he could not describe. In his mind, he made another silent vow, that he would protect what they had, no matter the challenges that might come. This was not a vow spoken aloud, but one carried in every action, every glance, every moment they spent together. Time tested them as it always does. There were moments of doubt, moments when the world outside seemed too loud, too confusing, and too full of expectation. She sometimes worried that his silence meant distance or disinterest, though it was never the case. He sometimes wondered if his quiet ways were enough, if his presence could truly provide the comfort she needed. Yet each time, they found their way back to each other, simply by being patient, by listening, and by choosing to be present. One particular day tested them more than most. A misunderstanding arose with her family, who had heard rumors about the differences in their backgrounds. They questioned her choices, worried about whether she was rushing into something she might regret. The woman felt cornered and afraid, unsure of how to defend her feelings or explain her connection with someone who lived a life so different from hers. She sought the Apache man that evening, finding him sitting quietly by the river where they had often walked. "I don't know if I can do this," she confessed, tears welling up in her eyes. "They don't understand, and I feel trapped between them and you." He listened carefully, never interrupting. After a long pause, he spoke gently. "You do not need to rush anything. You do not need to choose between their understanding and your heart. You need to be honest with yourself first. Whatever you decide, I will respect it. But I will not leave. I am here and I will stay." Her tears slowly turned into relief, a weight lifting from her chest. In that moment, she realized that his promise was not just about words. It was about actions, about presence, about loyalty that did not waver in the face of doubt or pressure. She began to understand that real trust was not built on dramatic gestures or public declarations. It was built in quiet moments, in steady support, and in the courage to remain when the world seemed uncertain. Over the following weeks, they learned to navigate the outside pressures together. The Apache man did not try to fight her family's opinions with words or arguments. Instead, he focused on being consistent, reliable, and true to his actions. He showed them through his deeds that he cared for her, that he respected her, and that he would honor the trust she had given him. Slowly, her family began to notice the steadiness in him, the way he never wavered, and the way she looked at him with quiet confidence and peace. Through all of this, their bond grew stronger. They discovered that love, when based on respect and trust, could withstand pressure and doubt. They shared dreams for the future, not grandiose plans but small hopes, a life built on honesty, on patience, on quiet joy. They spoke of walking together through the hills, tending to animals, sharing meals, and simply being present for each other. Each small dream was meaningful because it was rooted in the reality of their lives, not in fantasy. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky filled with stars, she whispered something to him that he would carry forever. "I feel safe with you. I feel like you see me, all of me, and it matters to you." He looked at her, feeling a warmth he had never experienced. In that quiet moment, he made yet another silent vow, to honor that trust, to protect it, and to never let it be broken. He knew life would have challenges ahead, but he also knew that some bonds, once formed with honesty and care, were strong enough to endure anything. And so, the days turned into months, and their connection became a quiet, steady force in their lives. They were no longer two separate people moving through the world alone. They had found each other, not in dramatic gestures, not in fleeting emotions, but in the patient, consistent act of trust, care, and presence. In the simplicity of their bond, they discovered a profound truth: that love is not always loud, but it can be powerful, unwavering, and enduring. In the quiet of that shared understanding, the Apache man realized that his life had changed. He had found someone who trusted him with her heart, someone whose presence made him feel whole, and someone whose first whisper of honesty had opened the door to something rare and real. And for the woman, she realized that she had found a soul who would stand by her quietly, faithfully, and without condition, someone who would honor her first trust as though it were sacred. Together, they walked forward in their lives, carrying the lessons of patience, trust, and quiet loyalty. Each day was not perfect, and each day brought new challenges, but they faced them with confidence, knowing that the foundation they had built could withstand the storms. The bond they shared was no longer fragile. It was strong, steady, and real, a bond that had begun with a whisper and a silent vow, and that would carry them through everything life had in store. Life, as it often does, tested the bond between the Apache man and the woman in ways neither had fully anticipated. They had built a connection rooted in trust, patience, and quiet understanding, yet life had a way of introducing challenges that were unavoidable. Distance, responsibilities, and unexpected events began to interfere with the rhythm they had carefully created. What had once been simple walks along quiet trails and evenings under the stars became harder to maintain. Their connection, strong as it was, now faced the first true test. It started subtly. The woman's work required her to spend longer hours in town, and sometimes she had to travel for a few days at a time. At first, the Apache man did not mind. He understood that life was not always convenient, and he trusted her completely. Yet, with each passing day of separation, a quiet ache began to grow in his chest. He missed her presence, her soft voice, and the small gestures that had become so important in his life. He found himself walking the hills alone, thinking of her, wishing she were there to notice the beauty he saw and to share in the quiet moments that had once belonged to both of them. She felt the same in her own way. Being apart made her realize just how much she relied on his calm presence. In town, surrounded by noise, people, and expectations, she felt a longing for the simplicity and safety he offered. There were moments when she would pause in the middle of her tasks, close her eyes, and imagine walking with him along the trails, hearing the soft rustle of leaves, or watching the sunlight play on the hills. These thoughts both comforted and pained her because she knew he was not physically there to share them. Their attempts to stay connected were often limited to short conversations or letters, yet even these small exchanges held weight. Each word was carefully chosen, each message filled with meaning. In his letters, he would describe the hills, the sky, and the small changes in nature he noticed. In hers, she would share her experiences, the people she met, and the moments that reminded her of him. Though brief, these communications reinforced their bond. They were reminders that even when apart, their connection remained intact. But distance is not the only test of a bond. Life often adds pressures that are less visible but equally challenging. The woman faced doubts from friends who did not fully understand her relationship. They questioned whether it was wise to invest so much trust in someone who lived a life so different from her own. Some even suggested that she might be idealizing him, imagining a depth of connection that could not survive reality. At first, she allowed these doubts to seep into her thoughts. She questioned herself, wondering if her trust was too strong, too quick, too dependent on hope. The Apache man, meanwhile, faced his own silent struggles. He had responsibilities at home, work on the land, care for the animals, and obligations to his community that demanded his time and attention. He often wondered if he was doing enough to show her that his feelings and promises were real. In his heart, he knew he would never betray her trust, but he feared that distance might create misunderstandings. What if silence was misread? What if his quiet ways were mistaken for indifference? These thoughts weighed heavily on him, though he rarely voiced them. Their first real challenge came when a misunderstanding arose during one of the woman's trips. A friend, unaware of the depth of her connection with the Apache man, made a comment that upset her deeply. She returned home feeling uncertain and frustrated, unsure how to process her emotions or how to explain the situation. When she sought him out, she was tense, her words sharper than usual. "I don't know if people will ever see what we have," she said, frustration in her voice. "They think it's strange, and I feel like I have to defend us constantly." He listened carefully, allowing her to speak without interruption. His calm presence alone helped her regain composure. When she finished, he spoke gently. "We cannot control how others see us. We can only be honest and true to what we feel. That is the foundation of what we have, and it is stronger than any misunderstanding." These words were not just comfort, they were a reminder of the trust that had been built between them. Over time, she realized that the opinions of others mattered far less than the reality they were creating together. Their relationship was not for anyone else to judge. It existed in the moments they shared, the promises they made, and the loyalty they demonstrated to one another. Even with this understanding, the separation and challenges of everyday life tested their patience. There were nights when they would lie awake, each in their own home, thinking about the other, wondering if the other was feeling the same longing. The Apache man sometimes felt a dull ache in his chest, wishing he could reach out and hold her, even if only for a few moments. She, in turn, experienced a similar pull, feeling a mix of sadness and hope. Their longing, though painful, was also a measure of how much they had come to value each other's presence. During one particularly long separation, the Apache man decided to take action in his own quiet way. He left small notes along the places they had walked together, simple messages of encouragement and care. One note described a sunrise he had watched, another spoke of the wildflowers that had just begun to bloom. Each note was an extension of his presence, a way of saying, "I am here, even if we are apart." When she discovered these notes, she felt a deep sense of warmth. They reminded her that love was not always in grand gestures. Sometimes it was in the small, consistent acts that showed thoughtfulness and care. As the seasons changed, so did their understanding of each other. They learned that love required patience, that trust was built over time, and that challenges did not weaken a bond but could strengthen it when faced together. Each trial, whether distance, misunderstanding, or doubt, became an opportunity for growth. The woman realized that her reliance on him was not a weakness, but a recognition of the stability he offered. The Apache man understood that emotional openness, though unfamiliar, was a strength that allowed him to deepen his connection with her. The most difficult test came when the woman received an opportunity that would take her far away for several months. It was a chance she had dreamed of, something that could shape her future in ways she had long hoped for. But it also meant prolonged separation, and the thought of being apart from him for so long caused her anxiety and fear. She struggled with conflicting emotions, joy for the opportunity, but sadness for what it might mean for them. When she spoke to him about it, she expected disappointment or resistance. Instead, he listened quietly, his expression calm and unwavering. "This is important to you," he said simply. "I want you to go. I will be here when you return." Our bond is not measured by distance, but by trust and choice. You choosing what is best for your life does not take away what we have. Her eyes filled with tears, both from relief and gratitude. No one had ever responded to her dreams with such understanding and respect. In that moment, she realized that loyalty was not about holding someone close in every physical sense, but about supporting them, believing in them, and being present in every way possible. She made a quiet vow to herself as well, to honor his trust, to remain patient, and to carry their bond in her heart wherever she went. During the months that followed, they maintained their connection in small but meaningful ways. Letters, messages, and occasional visits became their lifelines. Every word, every gesture, every shared thought was imbued with intention and care. They learned to communicate not just what they wanted to say, but what they felt, understanding that love was expressed as much through presence and consistency as through words. Through these trials, the Apache man and the woman grew individually as well as together. She became more confident in her choices, understanding that trust and love were not fragile, but resilient. He became more comfortable with emotional expression, realizing that openness did not weaken him, but strengthened the bond they shared. Together, they discovered that love was not a simple, effortless emotion, but a steady, deliberate commitment. It was choosing each other every day, even when circumstances made it difficult. And yet, despite all challenges, their connection never wavered. Each reunion, no matter how brief, was filled with renewed joy and appreciation. Every shared moment became richer because of the absence they had endured. They realized that true bonds are not measured by how easy life makes things, but by how faithfully two people navigate the challenges together. By the time she returned from her extended trip, both had grown in ways neither could have imagined. The distance had taught them patience, the misunderstandings had taught them resilience, and the challenges had taught them trust. Their love, once quiet and tentative, had become a steady force, unshakable even in the face of life's uncertainties. When they finally saw each other again, it was not a dramatic reunion. There were no grand speeches or public displays. There was simply the recognition of shared experiences, the quiet comfort of presence, and the unspoken acknowledgement that they had remained true to each other. In that embrace, months of separation, longing, and growth melted away, leaving only the enduring strength of their bond. And in that moment, they both understood a profound truth: that forever is not about perfect circumstances, dramatic gestures, or uninterrupted happiness. It is about trust, patience, loyalty, and choosing each other, day after day, through life's trials. Their bond, tested and strengthened, had become something rare and real, a love that could endure distance, misunderstanding, and the unpredictable currents of life. Time had passed, and the Apache man and the woman had endured months of challenges, distance, and quiet tests of trust. Life had not been easy, but every struggle had strengthened the bond they shared. Now, as they faced the next stage of their journey together, both felt a deep sense of anticipation and calm. They understood that forever was not a single moment, but a series of choices, small and large, made with honesty, patience, and loyalty. The day began like many others, with the sun rising slowly over the hills. Birds sang softly, and the air carried the scent of dew and fresh earth. The Apache man walked along the familiar trail, each step steady, each breath thoughtful. Months apart had taught him patience, and though the separation had been difficult, it had reminded him of the importance of presence, not just in proximity, but in heart and mind. Each memory of the woman, each letter and message exchanged, had been a reminder of why trust, once given, must never be broken. She approached the trail from the opposite direction, her steps quiet but purposeful. She had returned from her extended trip, her heart full of hope and excitement, but also a little nervousness. Even though their bond had grown stronger during the months apart, she wondered what the reunion would feel like in person. Would it feel the same? Would the distance have changed anything? As she came closer, she saw him waiting, standing with the same calm presence she had always admired. Relief and warmth filled her chest. They greeted each other with a quiet smile, a simple nod, and then without words they began walking together. It was the kind of reunion that needed no drama, no fanfare, only the comfort of familiarity and the acknowledgement of what they had endured. As they walked side by side, they shared small details of the months apart, stories of experiences, lessons learned, and moments that had reminded them of each other. Every word was meaningful because it was spoken with sincerity and care. The woman looked at him and spoke softly. "I was afraid the distance might change us, but it feels stronger now. I feel more sure than ever." He nodded, his eyes steady on hers. Distance does not change what is real. If anything, it teaches us what we are willing to hold on to. We have chosen each other, even when it was not easy. That is the strength of what we share. Those words were simple but profound. They reflected everything they had learned together, the power of patience, trust, and the quiet resilience of loyalty. The woman realized that the love they shared was not fragile as it might have seemed during moments of doubt or separation. It was steadfast, not dependent on perfect circumstances, but on the deliberate choice to be present, honest, and committed. In the weeks that followed, they settled back into their shared routines, but with a deeper understanding of each other. They walked the trails together, tended to the animals and shared meals, but now each action carried more meaning. Every conversation, every glance, every shared silence reminded them that their bond had survived challenges, and that it had grown stronger because of them. Life was still simple in some ways, but richer in meaning, filled with awareness and gratitude for each other's presence. One afternoon, as they sat by the river where they had often met, the woman spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "I realize now that forever is not a single promise. It is every day, every choice, every moment we choose to trust and care for each other. And I want that with you every day." The Apache man looked at her, feeling a calm certainty. In his mind, he had already made this vow long ago, but hearing her speak it aloud made it real in a new way. "I have promised to honor your trust from the very beginning," he said. "And I will continue to do so every day in every way I can. You have my loyalty, my respect, and my presence, always." They fell silent, the weight of their words settling between them like a quiet, comforting blanket. There was no need for grand gestures or dramatic displays. The strength of their bond was in the consistency of their actions, the steadiness of their presence, and the depth of their understanding. In that moment, they both knew that love was not measured by outward expressions, but by the quiet, deliberate choices made over time. As months turned into seasons, their lives continued with a steady rhythm. They faced small challenges, as all people do, unexpected responsibilities, changes in the weather that affected their work, and the occasional worry about the future. But each challenge was met together, with communication, patience, and trust. The Apache man and the woman learned that life was unpredictable, but the bond they shared could endure because it was grounded in truth, respect, and loyalty. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with shades of gold and purple, they sat together on a hill overlooking the valley. The wind was soft, carrying the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass. They did not speak much, but their silence was comfortable, filled with mutual understanding. It was in these moments, quiet and simple, that they truly felt the depth of their connection. The woman rested her head on his shoulder, feeling safe, seen, and understood. "I feel like we have grown so much," she said softly. "We have learned patience, trust, and the true meaning of loyalty. And through it all, I feel stronger, happier, and more certain than I ever have before." He wrapped his arm around her gently, a quiet gesture that carried more meaning than any words could convey. "We have grown together. Life will continue to bring challenges, but we will face them together. That is what makes this bond real. That is what makes it forever." As night fell, they watched the stars appear one by one, a reminder of the vastness of the world and the small, precious space they had created for each other. They spoke of dreams, not grand or unattainable, but simple and meaningful. Walking together through life's quiet moments, supporting each other, and remaining loyal even when circumstances were difficult. Every small act became a thread in the fabric of their forever. In the days that followed, they continued to build their life together, quietly and steadily. Their routines were simple: tending the land, caring for animals, walking through the hills, sharing meals and talking about their days. Yet simplicity did not mean dullness. Every small moment was filled with intention, appreciation, and care. They had learned that love was not about constant excitement, but about the quiet strength to remain together, to honor trust, and to choose each other each day. There were moments of reflection, too. They spoke about the months of separation, the challenges they had faced, and the lessons they had learned. Both realized that every test had brought them closer. Distance had strengthened their patience, misunderstandings had strengthened their communication, and life's unpredictability had strengthened their trust. Each trial had been a stepping stone, building a foundation that was unshakable. One morning, as they walked along the riverbank, the woman whispered something that he had longed to hear. "I know forever is not a word but a choice, and I choose you every day." He smiled, feeling a quiet joy that was steady, deep, and unshakable. "And I choose you. Every day, in every way, I will honor what we have. That is my promise." They continued walking, side by side, each step a reflection of the choices they had made and the trust they had nurtured. The sun rose higher, illuminating the hills, the river, and the path before them. Life would continue to bring changes, challenges, and moments of uncertainty, but they knew that together they could face anything. Their bond was no longer tentative or fragile. It had become a steady force, resilient and true, built on patience, loyalty, and the quiet understanding of each other's hearts. The Apache man and the woman had discovered a profound truth, that love is not about perfect circumstances or uninterrupted happiness. It is about the quiet, steady commitment to remain present, to honor trust, and to choose each other through life's trials. Forever, they realized, is not a single moment, but the ongoing act of being faithful, kind, and loyal to one another. And so they walked forward together, their hands entwined, their hearts aligned, and their spirits calm. The challenges they had faced were now memories that reminded them of their resilience. The moments of separation were lessons in patience and trust. And the quiet promises, whispered and unspoken, had become the foundation of a love that was real, enduring, and eternal in its simplicity. In the end, it was not a grand gesture that defined their story, but the small, deliberate acts of trust, care, and loyalty that filled their days. Every glance, every step, every shared moment was a choice to honor each other, to remain true, and to build a bond that could weather the storms of life. In the quiet of their shared world, they found the extraordinary within the ordinary, a love that was steadfast, resilient, and real. And as the sun set over the hills, painting the sky in warm hues of orange and gold, they stood together, knowing that the journey ahead would continue to test them, yet confident that their bond was unbreakable. They had learned that forever is not given, it is chosen. And in choosing each other, day after day, they had discovered a love that would last a lifetime.